The sun shone brightly over San Francisco, its rays spilling into the prestigious halls of Crestwood Academy. Students moved in clusters, laughter and chatter filling the air. Among them was Ethan Sinclair, a boy whose confidence radiated as strongly as the sun outside. With his designer clothes and easy smile, he seemed untouchable, a ruler of his world. But what lay beneath the surface of his privilege? At lunchtime, the cafeteria buzzed with energy. Ethan sat at a table surrounded by friends, their laughter ringing out like music. He was the center of attention, the one everyone wanted to be near. As he scanned the room, his gaze landed on Oliver, a quiet boy who often sat alone, absorbed in his books. Oliver's plain clothes and serious demeanor set him apart from the rest of the students. "Look at Oliver," Ethan said, smirking as he nudged his friend Ryan. "What a loser." The table erupted in laughter, and Ethan felt a rush of power. It was in that moment, caught up in the thrill of the crowd, that he made a cruel decision. Ethan leaned over his tray and spat on Oliver's plate. The laughter grew louder, a wave of amusement washing over the table. Ethan watched as Oliver's eyes widened in shock, his face turning pale. The room fell silent for a heartbeat before erupting again, the laughter drowning out any sense of decency. "Nice one, Ethan," Ryan cheered, clapping him on the back. But amidst the laughter, a strange feeling began to creep into Ethan's heart. He caught a glimpse of Oliver's expression, hurt and bewildered, as if he had been struck. As the laughter faded, Ethan's confidence wavered. What had he done? The image of Oliver's pained gaze lingered like an unwelcome shadow. He tried to shake it off, but the feeling clung to him, planting the first seeds of doubt about his actions. "Did you see his face?" Ryan asked, still chuckling. "Priceless." "Yeah," Ethan replied, but his voice lacked enthusiasm. He stared at his untouched food, the bright colors on his plate suddenly looking dull. What did it mean to be powerful if it came at the cost of someone else's dignity? The question nagged at him, unfurling like a dark cloud over his sunny facade. Throughout the rest of lunch, Ethan felt distant, as if he were watching himself from outside. The laughter around him felt hollow, and he found himself glancing toward Oliver, who had turned away, pushing his plate aside. The bell rang, signaling the end of lunch, and Ethan stood up, but he felt heavy. The echoes of laughter faded, replaced by an unsettling silence inside him. Was this what it felt like to be truly cruel? As he walked down the hallway, he caught sight of Oliver again, sitting alone on a bench, staring at the ground. The boy's shoulders were slumped, a picture of defeat. Ethan's heart tightened. The laughter of his friends felt like a distant memory, replaced by an uncomfortable weight in his chest. "Hey, Oliver," Ethan said, his voice barely above a whisper. Oliver looked up, surprise flickering in his eyes. "What do you want?" Ethan opened his mouth, the words stuck like stones in his throat. He wanted to apologize, to take it back, but how could he? The moment had passed, and what was done could not be undone. "Nothing," he finally said, turning away. As he walked off, the echo of Oliver's gaze stayed with him, a haunting reminder of the choice he had made. What would happen now? Would he just forget? Or was this the beginning of something that would change everything? Ethan pushed the thought aside, but deep down, he knew the answer was waiting to unfold. The next day, the air felt different for Ethan Sinclair. As he walked through the hallways of his prestigious school, the laughter and chatter of his classmates seemed distant. The sun streamed through the tall windows, but it did little to warm the cold knot of anxiety in his stomach. He could not shake off the feeling that something was about to change. "Ethan, you coming to the game later?" one of his friends called out, but Ethan just nodded absent-mindedly. His mind was elsewhere, trapped in the moment from the day before when he had humiliated Oliver. The sound of laughter still echoed in his ears, but now it felt hollow and empty. Suddenly, Ethan received a slip of paper from the office. It was an invitation to the principal's office. He took a deep breath, his heart racing. As he walked down the corridor, he could feel the eyes of his classmates on him, their whispers floating through the air like shadows. "What's wrong with him?" he heard someone say. "Did he get in trouble?" Ethan pushed the door open to the principal's office, where Mr. Thompson sat behind his desk. Mr. Thompson was known for his stern demeanor, yet there was a kindness in his eyes. He looked up as Ethan entered, and the weight of his gaze made Ethan's throat tighten. "Sit down, Ethan," Mr. Thompson said in a calm voice. Ethan obeyed, his hands fidgeting nervously on his lap. The principal took a moment before speaking again. "I want to talk about your actions yesterday." Ethan's heart sank. He had hoped that his arrogance would simply fade away, but it was clear that Mr. Thompson would not let him off easy. The principal continued, "What you did to Oliver was unkind and unnecessary. I believe you need to understand the impact of your actions." Ethan felt a mix of shame and defiance. "It was just a joke," he muttered, but even as he said it, he could see the disappointment in Mr. Thompson's eyes. "A joke at the expense of someone else's dignity is not a joke at all," Mr. Thompson replied firmly. "You are going to volunteer at a local shelter for underprivileged youth. It's time for you to see life from a different perspective." Ethan's first instinct was to protest. "But I don't want to go there. I have plans," he exclaimed, his voice rising with frustration. "This is not up for debate," Mr. Thompson said, his voice steady. "You need to learn empathy, and this is the best way I know how to teach you." Ethan slumped in his chair, knowing he had lost this battle. Later that afternoon, Ethan found himself standing outside the local shelter, the building looking more daunting than he had imagined. He took a deep breath before stepping inside, the air heavy with a mix of hope and desperation. The walls were painted bright colors, but they could not mask the struggles that lived within. "Welcome," a cheerful voice greeted him. It was a young woman, probably in her 20s, with a warm smile. "I'm Mia. You must be Ethan. We're glad to have you here." Ethan forced a smile, but felt awkward. "Yeah, I guess," he replied, unsure of what to expect. Mia led him through the shelter, introducing him to the kids who lived there. He noticed a boy named Lucas sitting quietly at a table, scribbling in a notebook. "Lucas, this is Ethan. He's going to be helping us out," Mia said. Lucas looked up, his eyes bright but cautious. "Hi," he said softly. "Hey," Ethan replied, feeling a strange connection to the boy. He watched as Lucas returned to his writing, the determination on his face striking. "What are you working on?" Ethan asked, curiosity getting the better of him. "I'm writing about my dreams," Lucas answered, his voice barely above a whisper. "I want to be a pilot one day." Ethan raised an eyebrow, surprised. "Really? That's cool. But how can you be a pilot if you're here?" Lucas shrugged, a hint of sadness in his eyes. "It's hard, but I have to try. My family needs me." Ethan felt a pang of guilt. He had never thought about what it meant to dream when you had so little. "I'm sorry," he said, but Lucas just smiled faintly. "You can help me with math if you want," Lucas offered, his voice filled with hope. Ethan hesitated, unsure of how he could help. "I'm not great at math," he admitted. "That's okay," Lucas replied. "We can learn together." As Ethan sat down with Lucas, he realized this was more than just a punishment. It was an opportunity to learn, to change, and perhaps to find a way to make things right. With every story he heard and every laugh he shared, the echo of his past arrogance began to fade, replaced by a growing sense of responsibility. As the days turned into weeks, Ethan Sinclair found himself returning to the shelter more often than he had expected. The initial resistance had faded, replaced by a growing sense of purpose. He looked forward to his conversations with Lucas, who had become a friend. The boy's stories were both inspiring and heartbreaking, filled with dreams of a better life. One afternoon, while they were sitting at a small table in the corner of the shelter, Lucas spoke about his family. "I want to be a doctor someday," he said, his eyes shining with determination. "But I have to help my mom first. She's been working 2 jobs just to make ends meet." Ethan listened intently, feeling a mixture of admiration and guilt. "That's really brave of you, Lucas. I can't imagine how hard it must be for you," he replied. Lucas shrugged, a hint of a smile on his face. It's just what you do for family, you know? I want to make things better for us. Ethan felt a knot in his stomach as he remembered how he had treated Oliver at school, someone who had also been struggling. It was as if a mirror was held up to his past arrogance, and he couldn't look away. I used to think that money could solve everything, he admitted. But now, I see that being there for someone is what really matters. Lucas nodded, understanding in his eyes. Yeah, it's about support. Sometimes just having someone believe in you can change everything. Motivated by their conversation, Ethan offered to help Lucas with his math homework. He had always excelled in math, but it felt different now, more meaningful. Let's tackle this together, he said, pulling out a notebook. Lucas hesitated. Are you sure? I don't want to be a burden. Ethan smiled. You could never be a burden. I want to help. Plus, I could use a study buddy too. As they worked through problems, Ethan found himself enjoying the process. Lucas struggled with some concepts, but with patience, Ethan guided him through each step. See? You got it. Ethan exclaimed, clapping his hands when Lucas finally solved a tricky equation. Lucas beamed, his confidence growing. Thanks, Ethan. I never thought I could understand this stuff. Ethan felt a warmth in his chest. This was the connection he had yearned for, the feeling of making a difference, even if it was small. You can do anything you set your mind to, Lucas. Just keep pushing. That moment became a turning point for Ethan. He realized that respect and empathy were far more valuable than wealth and status. Helping Lucas with his homework was not just about math. It was about building a bond, about understanding each other's lives. Later that week, as Ethan walked home, he reflected on his past. The laughter of his peers still echoed in his mind, but now it was laced with a sense of urgency. He felt the weight of his previous arrogance bearing down on him, pushing him to change. At dinner that night, Ethan's parents noticed his silence. Is everything okay, Ethan? His mother asked, concern etched on her face. Yeah, just thinking, he replied, absent-mindedly pushing his food around on the plate. His father raised an eyebrow. Thinking about what? Ethan hesitated, unsure of how to express his feelings. About people, and how I treated them. I want to do better. I want to help. His mother's expression softened. That's a good goal, Ethan. It's never too late to start making a difference. With her words, Ethan felt a spark of hope. He could change. He would change. His journey was just beginning. As he lay in bed that night, Ethan closed his eyes, his mind swirling with thoughts of Lucas, Oliver, and the lessons he had learned. The echo of his past arrogance was still there, but it was fading. In its place grew a strong desire for redemption. He would not only stand up for himself, but for others who were struggling, just like Lucas. He was ready to embrace his new path. The school auditorium buzzed with excitement as students gathered for the annual talent show. Colorful banners draped from the ceiling, and the scent of popcorn filled the air. Ethan Sinclair stood among his friends, trying to appear relaxed, but inside he felt a knot of anxiety. He had changed in ways he had never expected since his time at the shelter, and the echoes of his past actions haunted him. As the show began, laughter and cheers erupted from the crowd. Ethan watched the performances, clapping along, but his mind drifted. He thought about Oliver, the quiet boy he had once bullied. He wondered if Oliver was enjoying the show or if he was even there at all. Suddenly, the cheerful atmosphere shattered when Ethan caught sight of something happening near the back of the auditorium. A group of boys, loud and brash, had surrounded Oliver. They pushed him, mocking him with cruel laughter. Ethan's heart raced as he watched Oliver's face turn pale, his eyes pleading for help. A wave of protectiveness surged through Ethan. Without thinking, he moved forward, his feet carrying him toward the scene. "Hey, leave him alone!" Ethan shouted, his voice stronger than he felt. The bullies paused, surprised to see Ethan, the school's star athlete, standing up for Oliver. One of the boys sneered, "What's it to you, Sinclair? He's just a loser." Ethan's heart pounded in his chest, but he stood taller. You think it's funny to pick on someone just because he's different? It's not cool. Back off. Oliver looked up, confusion and surprise etched on his face. Ethan could see the mix of emotions swirling within him, fear, disbelief, and maybe even a flicker of hope. The other boys exchanged glances, unsure of how to respond to Ethan's sudden display of courage. Why do you care? One of them asked, trying to regain control of the situation. Because it's wrong, Ethan replied, his voice steady. We all deserve respect, no matter who we are or where we come from. The bullies shifted uncomfortably. Ethan felt a surge of determination. This was his chance to make things right, not just for Oliver, but for himself as well. He took a step closer, his gaze unwavering. You want to laugh? Laugh at me, but leave him out of it. The tension in the air thickened. Finally, one of the boys scoffed and muttered something under his breath before turning and walking away. The others followed, their bravado deflating. As they retreated, Ethan felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The auditorium was silent for a moment, then a few students began to clap. Slowly, the applause grew, echoing through the room. Ethan turned to Oliver, who stood frozen, his expression a mix of surprise and gratitude. Are you okay? Ethan asked softly, taking a small step closer. Oliver nodded, though his eyes were wide. I didn't expect you to do that. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, feeling a mix of relief and embarrassment. I know I've messed up in the past. I'm sorry for how I treated you. I want to make things right. Oliver's expression softened. Thank you, Ethan. That really meant a lot. In that moment, Ethan felt something shift within him. He had stepped into the light of vulnerability, embracing the importance of standing up for others. No longer was he just the arrogant boy who sought validation through power. He was becoming someone who understood the weight of his actions. As the talent show continued, Ethan and Oliver found seats together. They shared quiet conversations about the performances, and for the first time, Ethan felt a genuine connection with Oliver. He realized that his act of bravery had opened a door to friendship, one that he had never thought possible. The echoes of Ethan's past arrogance began to fade, replaced by the sound of laughter and the promise of change. He knew this was just the beginning of his journey. Standing up for Oliver not only empowered him, but also solidified his commitment to defend those who could not defend themselves. As the final act of the night took the stage, Ethan looked over at Oliver, who was smiling now, his earlier fear replaced with joy. In that moment, Ethan felt a deep sense of peace. He had taken a stand, and in doing so, he had taken a step toward becoming the person he wanted to be. Ethan stood in the small room of the shelter, the scent of worn books and the soft murmur of voices surrounding him. He looked around at the young faces eager for help. The experience of volunteering had changed him, igniting a passion he never knew he had. Today, he was ready to take the next step. Hey everyone, Ethan called out, trying to sound cheerful. The group of kids turned their attention toward him, their eyes curious. I thought we could start a study session together. We can help each other out with homework. Lucas, sitting in the front row, smiled at Ethan. That sounds great. I could use some help with my math. Ethan nodded, feeling a surge of happiness. Awesome, I'll help you with that. And if anyone else needs help, just let me know. As they settled in, Ethan found himself more at ease. He moved between the tables, offering guidance where he could. With each question he answered, he felt a sense of fulfillment. It was different from the hollow feeling of superiority he once clung to. Later that afternoon, as they took a break, Lucas approached Ethan. You know, you don't have to do this. You could just go back to your life and forget about us. Ethan looked at Lucas, surprised. I don't want to forget. I want to help. I've learned so much from all of you, more than I ever learned in school. Lucas raised an eyebrow. Really? Even from me? Especially from you, Ethan replied, a grin spreading across his face. You've shown me what it means to fight for your dreams, even when things get tough. Encouraged by his growing friendship with Lucas, Ethan decided to take the next step. He wanted to create mentorship programs that connected his wealthy peers with the kids at the shelter. He envisioned a place where both worlds could meet and learn from each other. That evening, Ethan sat down with his laptop, determined to draft a proposal. He typed furiously, pouring out his ideas. We could have workshops, tutoring sessions, and even sports events. It will help everyone understand each other better, he muttered to himself, caught up in the excitement. The next day at school, Ethan approached a group of his friends during lunch. They were gathered at their usual table, laughing and joking. Ethan felt a mix of nerves and determination. "Hey guys, can we talk about something?" he asked, his voice steady. His friend, Jake, looked up. "Sure, what's up?" "I want to start a program that connects us with kids from the shelter," Ethan said, his heart racing. "We can help them with school, and in return, we can learn from their experiences." The table fell silent. Some faces looked skeptical. "Why would we want to do that?" Emily asked, tilting her head. "They're not like us." Ethan took a deep breath, remembering Lucas's smile, the hope in his eyes. "Because it's important. We all have something to learn from each other. It's about building bridges, not walls." Jake nodded slowly. "You really believe that, don't you?" "I do," Ethan said, his voice firm. "And I think we can make a difference." As the conversation continued, slowly but surely, the mood began to shift. One by one, his friends began to see the value in his ideas. They started to ask questions, and Ethan felt a spark of hope. After a few days of planning, Ethan and his friends returned to the shelter, ready to launch the first mentorship session. Excitement buzzed in the air as kids from the shelter arrived, curious about what the day would hold. Ethan stood before the group, his heart pounding. "Welcome, everyone. We are so glad you could join us. We want to learn from each other and have some fun along the way." Lucas smiled brightly, standing beside him. "Let's make this a great experience for all of us." As the session began, laughter filled the room. Ethan felt a warmth spread through him. He was no longer just a privileged kid. He was part of something bigger. Each shared moment, each smile, was a reminder of the journey he had taken. In that moment, Ethan understood the true essence of redemption. It was not just about making amends. It was about creating a community where understanding thrived and kindness became the norm. He looked around at the faces filled with hope and possibility, and he realized that change was not just within him. It was in the hearts of everyone gathered that day. The school auditorium buzzed with excitement as students filled the seats, their chatter creating a lively atmosphere. Ethan Sinclair stood backstage, his heart pounding in his chest. Today, he would share his journey of change with his classmates. He took a deep breath, recalling the moments that had changed him. The laughter at Oliver's expense, the lessons at the shelter, and the courage he found within himself. As the principal welcomed everyone, Ethan's mind raced. He could see Oliver sitting in the front row, a mix of support and apprehension on his face. Ethan felt a surge of gratitude for Oliver, who had become not just a friend, but a symbol of his growth. He glanced down at his notes, but he knew the most powerful words came from the heart. When it was finally his turn to speak, Ethan stepped onto the stage. The bright lights made it hard to see the audience, but he focused on the message he wanted to share. "Hello, everyone," he began, trying to steady his voice. "Today, I want to talk about something important: empathy and the impact our actions have on others." He paused, feeling the weight of his words. "I used to believe that being popular and powerful was everything. I thought it made me better than others. But I was wrong." The room fell silent, and Ethan could feel the attention of his peers on him. "I hurt someone who didn't deserve it. I hurt Oliver." He glanced at Oliver, who nodded encouragingly. "One day at lunch, I thought it was funny to treat him poorly, to show off in front of my friends, but all I did was create pain. I didn't see how my actions affected him. I didn't think about the person behind the jokes." Ethan's voice broke slightly, but he pressed on. "After that, I had to volunteer at a shelter. At first, I was scared and didn't want to be there. I thought I was above it. But then I met Lucas. He shared his dreams with me, dreams that seemed so far away. He showed me that life is not just about wealth or status. It's about connection, kindness, and understanding. The students shifted in their seats, some whispering to each other. Ethan continued, "As I helped Lucas, I started to see the world differently. I learned that everyone has a story, and we should never judge someone based on their background. We should lift each other up instead of tearing each other down." Ethan took a deep breath. One day, I saw Oliver being bullied again. Instead of standing by, I found the courage to step in. In that moment, I realized that true strength is not about power. It's about protecting those who cannot protect themselves. He looked at Oliver, who smiled back, his eyes shining with appreciation. "I know I can't change the past," Ethan admitted, "but I can change the future, and so can all of you. We have the power to create a school environment where everyone feels safe and valued." He felt a wave of determination wash over him. "Let's challenge each other to be better. Let's choose kindness over cruelty. Let's support each other, regardless of our differences." As he finished his speech, a wave of applause erupted from the audience. Ethan felt a rush of relief and happiness. He had shared his truth, and it seemed to resonate with his classmates. He stepped back from the microphone, his heart full. After the assembly, students approached him with words of encouragement. "That was amazing, Ethan," one girl said. "I never knew you felt that way." Ethan smiled, grateful for the support. He spotted Oliver walking towards him, and they embraced. "You did it, Ethan. You really did," Oliver said, his voice warm with pride. "Thanks, Oliver. I couldn't have done it without you," Ethan replied. "Together, we can make a difference." As they stood side by side, they felt a sense of purpose. The echo of Ethan's past arrogance had transformed into a powerful call to action, not only for him, but for everyone in the school. They were no longer just students. They were advocates for change, ready to inspire others to grow and make a difference, regardless of their backgrounds. Share this story if you believe that empathy and kindness can change lives. Leave a comment about a time when you stood up for someone or learned from a difficult experience, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories like this one. Let's create a world where everyone feels valued and supported.